What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my two great co-hosts, Federico Perez and Ralph Hanna. And guys, we're already at the end of the month. It is the final day of the month. We're heading into March, a big March for a lot of things happening in Paraguay. Obviously, the World Cup qualifiers are in a couple of weeks. We have seen Gustavo Alfaro travel the entire world, looking at some of the players, speaking to them. I'm sure he's considering some of them that will be on his list for these really crucial games between Chile and Colombia. We will obviously talk about that in the coming weeks because we still need to focus on what's going on with players abroad, with the national teams, and all disciplines, really. And I want to go to Fed on this one to kick it off because, really, as much as we always talk about what's going on in football, like 11 aside and stuff like that, men's and women's, we got to talk about the other forms of football. There are other forms of football, as many people perhaps don't pay attention to or whatnot. But, FIFA has various tournaments for other kinds of football. And one of the sports that is going on for Paraguay, they're doing so well. And you had the pleasure of commentating some of those games. So it's been good to see Paraguay do well and beat Argentina again in the same sport, but in a different format.
Hi, Roberto. Hi, Rob. Hi, everyone listening to Guarani Vision. Great to be back for another episode. And just to kick it off, starting this episode with no shoes on. We're talking about beach soccer, guys. Yeah, let's get in there. Let's talk a little bit about this sport, which has always been a talking point here in Paraguay ever since it started, right? About 20 years ago when FIFA picked it up. I mean, Paraguay has always been really good in beach soccer. Paraguayans have always been really proud of this team and the way they've represented the country, even winning a Copa America back in 2022. They're the only other national team in South America besides Brazil that have won it so far. So that's something to always be proud about and a reason to always watch this team and be behind them. This past week, I've been following the Pinandi or the barefooted. We can always call them that way also. The beach soccer national team, and they've done really well. They actually picked it up after losing the first game to Venezuela. They were able to beat Argentina, and then they were able to beat the six-time world champion, last world champion also, Brazil. And that was a huge win, a huge impact. That always puts you out there. The world kind of watches those games also when you get it done. And we weren't able to qualify to the last World Cup. So for these guys, they're behind that mission, right, in this Copa America, because in this Copa America, three teams are going to make it to the next World Cup. So they're trying to do that. The mindset has been that way going into this tournament to get back to the World Cup after being there 5 in a row. We missed the last one in Qatar. We want to get back to the one that's going to be played in these 2025. And it looks really well, Roberto. I think we have a very well put together team, very well prepared. You see a lot of the guys that have been there before, like Pedro Moran. You see Carlos Carvalho, Valentin Benitez. They're always making it happen for the young guys. I saw a great performance from Thiago Barrios, also the Medina brothers. We have plenty of really good players, quality, even in our goalkeeper, Joao Rolón, that has been nominated before to be one of the best goalkeepers in the world, one of the best players also. So there's always something to be proud about this team. And moving forward, we do have the World Cup this year, so hopefully they do perform really well again. And it looks like we're headed that way to another World Cup, Roberto. Happy to talk about another national team that has done really well at the beginning of this year.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be a full 2025 full of World Cups for Paraguay in various disciplines. The tournament happening in Seychelles in May in Africa, so we'll have to wait and see if they do make the trip all the way there in May. But Ralph, I mean, you look at all the other things that are also going on. You have the U17, wanting to qualify. You have obviously the women's team wanting to qualify. It's really it would be important, of course, for Paraguay as a whole, and of course the big one happening in North America next year. But I think like these qualifications to these tournaments in various disciplines really boost the importance of an FA of a country in its football program, really, because it's not just 11 aside, it's not just men's, it's women's, it's futsal, it's beach soccer, it's so many different game formats of the game that it's all kind of overseen with the APF, the Paraguayan FA. So anything goes, and all sorts of qualifications and wins count a lot.
Yeah, that's right. Hi, Roberto, Fede, everybody watching and listening. There's so much going on, like you're saying. I mean, especially this year, and we saw some of the warm-ups alongside this tournament going on, the beach soccer. The under-17s were playing as a warm-up for what's going to be their Sudamericano. They lost 3-0 yesterday Venezuela, which isn't a great sign, but there's plenty of time until then. And of course, with the new format, it's like an expanding under 17s World Cup. The chances of qualifying are much higher. So I think we're still hopeful there. Paraguay lost, the women's team lost 2 friendlies to Uruguay. I thought in the first one, there were some individual errors. The second one, they looked much better. And really, it was a goal by Jessica Martinez. There's no goal line technology, but she's got an amazing goal that wasn't given, came off the bar, went down. I don't know why that wasn't given. The memories of Frank Lampard for me in the 2010 World Cup. But that was also the first games that Fabio Fukumoto was officially in charge of the women's team. He's basically been in charge of them for the last few months, but he was unveiled officially this week as they're looking forward to go to Copa America and start trying to build on what's been like a really long-term program as well with the women's football in Paraguay. We got under-20s Copa Libertadores coming up next week, which is, hey, think about this for the stadiums. Remember, they're going to be using San Lorenzo Stadium, which Guarani have been using while their stadium's getting renovated. So the stadium situation will continue in Paraguay. So there's a lot going on. We're trying to cover all of it. We'd love to cover more. So don't forget that you can donate to us on Buy Me a Coffee, Guarani Vision. There's a description in the link below if you're watching on YouTube or where you're listening. So please help out, and we'll try and cover more of this because there's just so much going on at the moment in Paraguay.
Yeah, of course, every sort of donation is appreciated. And yeah, of course, I think what is appreciative is, of course, Cerro Porteño, because, they've been going through quite a roller coaster week. And, we'll start with that because we'll talk fresh about the game that happened recently. That we'll talk about the good news and the bad news. Talk about the good news first, because Cerro Porteño, going into this game against Monagas, they were coming off a 4-0 win over them in Venezuela. It really was kind of a formality heading into La Nueva Olla. But you kind of look at the morale, and we'll get to that, especially talking about the Superclásico. You felt like Cerro needed to do a performance that I felt had to be customary for them to get back on track. And it didn't go the right way when Monagas scored early on in like the 4th minute, but then it just came back for Diego Martinez's men. Obviously, Diego Leon scoring his first goal of the season for Cerro Porteño. He had already scored for the U20s already, and at the Sudamericano. Then it was obviously Morel getting it, and then Willer Vieira getting the third and decisive goal to win 7-1 on aggregate. And now they will be taking a trip all the way to Melgar, to Peru, for the final stage. But unlike Boca Juniors, they will be playing in a continental competition. We don't know which one it will be, if it will be Libertadores or the Sudamericana. But, Ralph, going into this one and this game as a whole, at least them qualifying was kind of doing the bare minimum, but now really it's about how the team needs to perform well heading into this game against Melgar next week, and then of course seeing if they can indeed qualify for the Libertadores group stage.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? These games it's huge. It's a bit like to do another comparison with English football. It's a bit like the playoff final in the championship. It's such an important game because of what can come afterwards. So Cerro have basically got over $1 million in prize money from last night's game, but also, like you say, they've guaranteed international football this year. If they lose to Melgar over the 2 legs, they'll go straight into the Sudamericana. If they win, which is what they're hoping to do, they'll be in Libertadores group stages. So it was actually a huge thing, but it didn't feel like such a big game. That the stadium looked half empty because everybody, they just had the Clásico, which we're going to talk about, but also they knew Cerro were not going to give up a 4-goal lead. I think nobody has ever given up a 4-goal lead in the Copa Libertadores second leg. So even Cerro weren't going to let that one slip. Although we were a bit worried after the first goal, what might happen. But then you saw the quality coming through, and the quality of a lot of young players. Diego Leon became the second youngest Cerro player to score in the Libertadores. The youngest is, of course, on the team at the moment is Juan Iturbe back in 2011 when he scored against Colo-Colo. 2011 is interesting because that's also the last time Cerro have won by such a big margin away. If I remember, like it scored more than 3 goals away. 2011 is when Neymar was in Santos. It's when they got to the semifinals and they lost to Neymar Santos. So, hey, I think a lot of things are coming around that people are starting to wonder, are we going to get really this year? Could it be another good run? Which would really save, I think, Diego Martinez's job, because let's talk about that. He's already under a lot of pressure from what we saw in the Clásico, which we're going to talk about. So he had to do something here. And the first thing he did was he changed his team completely, right? Even to the goalkeeper, Gatito Fernandez wasn't in goal. He had basically a totally different 11. And he said, go out and impress me and show me what you can do. So we saw the quality of Diego Leon, another young player, Wilder Vieira. He got the header towards the end, which made it 3-1. He played Alexis Fariña instead of in basically the position that Pachi Carrizo has been in. And I thought Fariña had a very good game. Of course, the quality of opposition we can take into account. But that's really interesting because he likes Fariña and he's used him in, I'd say, almost 3 different positions so far. But this is the first time he used him in that Pachi Carrizo role. And so is he starting to fight for that spot? And we might see Pachi Carrizo drop to the bench. And then a right back, right? Right back, they've been using Velasquez, but he's not really a right back. And then Bruno Valdez has not had a good start at centre back coming back from injury. So does he want to move Velasquez back in? Alan Benitez looks like he's on his way out, and I don't think Diego Martinez has really trusted him. So he puts in Alan Nunez, the very young right back, very attacking. So along with Diego Leon, if you have those two, you suddenly have a very different team with that 4-4-2 diamond he's trying to play. So I think it was, in a way, it was a formality, but we started to see some interesting things that maybe can transfer over into the local league. Cerro really need to pick up points there.
They've been totally 2 different teams, right? The one that we've seen lately in the local league and the one that we saw, especially in these 2 games against Monagas. This was a boring series, guys. I mean, to be honest, just totally one-sided. I mean, if you're a Cerro fan, obviously you were going crazy in front of the TV, scoring so much on a team like this one, stopping on a very bad team like Monagas. I was expecting so much more from the Venezuelans team from what I saw in the first in the first leg. So I thought that they were going to pick it up. I thought they were going to put Cerro Porteño against the ropes eventually, but they did not do that at all. I mean, Cerro pretty much controlled the situation after they scored it early, and I want to chip in a little bit more in a couple of players, because what I saw from Diego Leon is just what I've been expecting to see from him after he's been signed from Manchester United. I didn't see that player in the last Sudamericano, the under-20 that we talked about. I didn't see him that loose. I didn't see him going forward, shooting at goal. And yesterday he was that player. You know, he was going for that one-on-one. He wanted to make the difference. I think a lot of players know that Libertadores is a whole nother stage. There's the whole continent, the whole world watching these games, and if you have an impact in these games, there's a lot more people watching. And he knew that. You could see it in the celebration, you know, showing his number, showing his name back there. He had a whole celebration ready. I mean, you could see that it's a special moment for him. Also, it's going to be very special the way that they treat him these upcoming months, and just how much game time he has, really. Looking forward to his European trip. And obviously in the midfield, Alexis Fariña, I mean, he made the difference. He was key. He was the creative player really in that midfield in the first half, making it happen with the passes. I mean, he gave the assist to Diego Leon, but that wasn't just it. I mean, you could see it as just the game started that he was going to be the key player in that midfield, because Jorge Morel wasn't going forward that much, even though he ended up scoring in a play. You saw Gaston Jimenez also trying to score. The one that really let me down in this midfield was Rodriguez Derlis. He hasn't had that many opportunities, but he didn't have the best game. So for some of these guys, I mean, they are the 3rd, maybe even 4th option for this coach. He does have a deep squad, Roberto. It did not show up in the Superclásico, but against Monagas, it was more than enough. And this was a huge win. It was huge to get through this team, because this means that for Cerro Porteño, the international year will keep on going. It has to be Libertadores, or it can also be Sudamericana now.
Well, I think Libertadores would be obviously the main priority in the sport, especially with the economic cost as well. I think it would be much more worth it. And of course, because, you know, they have to deal with their rivals, which we'll talk about now again in Olimpia, because after what we saw on the weekend, we're going to switch gears to what happened in the Superclásico, because we saw Cerro Olimpia in his really big game in the Defensores del Chaco really was a must win. And of course, for Cerro to kind of break a lot of records that they don't want, you know, the fact that they've gone winless since 2022. And that streak continues, because it was Cerro Porteño, even though they had started well, a really nice goal from Juan Iturbe, Chico da Costa with the assist. It was going very well for them, but for 5 minutes, Derlis Gonzalez seems like someone that loves to score against Cerro Porteño, gets the goal in the 37th minute, and then in the 71st minute, Rodney Redes with the dagger to win the game for Olimpia. And the streak continues as Olimpia continue their kind of unbeaten streak against Cerro Porteño. And really looking at the league as a whole, it's a big blow for Cerro as a morale, because now they are in 7th with 8 points. Olimpia right there with 13th, right below Libertad on 16th. I mean, we'll talk about kind of this race that we're kind of getting, if we're even going to get one a race. But I mean, for Cerro Porteño, Fede, it just went completely wrong for them yet again. And he saw how pissed off the fans were. And, even if that was the result of the game that we saw against Monagas, this was not the result that they wanted.
Yeah, first of all, we got to talk about our predictions, guys, because you two were wrong and I was right. Somebody was going to be right in this show, and thankfully it was me. Olimpia did it, and they really came back from a hard start, right? And you could see that Iturbe was going crazy in front of the stands, screaming for that goal that you knew that was important for him. In this moment, Cerro has had so much trouble beating Olimpia lately, and this was a big game for them, and they needed to make it happen somehow. But Iturbe didn't show up the whole game. He had trouble in the second half, had to come back apparently with a stomach ache. He was apparently sick to his stomach in a certain moment and had to come out of the game. And he was probably being one of the better players in Cerro Porteño. So that was a problem, even from the strategy point of view, because of the subs. And that kind of, I think, blew away Diego Martinez's game plan. And that gave the opportunity for Martin Palermo to show his stuff, show just how well he knows his players now. And he did it once again, the way he picked it up in the second half. And I was just remembering stuff that you guys say all the time. I mean, Roberto has mentioned Benedetto and what he can bring to this team, and he's the one that showed up to pretty much make the play that gave Rodney Redes he gave the assist to Rodney Redes for the goal that gave Olimpia the win. And I was also remembering Ralph, because he's always saying, look, Olimpia always looks scrappy, they always have problems, but they end up winning somehow, and they did it again, right, against their classic rival. And when you pick up a Superclásico after losing it, it just feels even better, guys. And you could see it in the stands, you could see it the way the fans felt it, and it was a special win, because I think Olimpia kind of needed to just keep on winning and feel this streak right now. They're in a winning streak. They feel like a winning team, and this is huge for them moving forward, not just to fighting for the Apertura, but just to build a good team looking into the Libertadores, Rafa. So I think this is a huge win, because you got players coming back from injury, and they're all chipping in also.
Yeah, it was like you mentioned, I think the scrappiness, or just finding the way to win, that Palermo has instilled into this team, because it was his 50th game as Olimpia coach. And honestly, like, there's not that many memorable victories in terms of them rolling over teams, but he's got the championship. They're second now. And there's that feeling that, when the chips are down, somebody's going to come in and do something. And it's different players all the time. For example, I thought Facundo Zavala had a great game at left back, because Cecilio Dominguez has been one of the best players so far this season. And he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to take on this guy because I can beat him, or so he thought. And I think after 3 minutes, 4 minutes, like really early in the game, he runs at him, he beats him, and he gets a cross in, and Iturbe shoots wide. I think it's the 5th minute. And you're like, okay, we can see what's going to happen. The rest of the game, he could not get past Zavala. And that really harmed Cerro in one way. And then on the other side as well, I think with Pachi Carrizo he likes to come inside a lot. So suddenly you've got the team almost like very lopsided, overloading one side. And it became easier and easier to defend against as the game went on. What I also thought as well with Cerro is, in the second half, they did look tired. I mean, we talked about Venezuela. It was a long trip, and you could really see that Olimpia were much stronger in that second half, especially even after the goal. So around 37 minutes, they're much stronger and they're winning much more battles. But I think that's also credit to Palermo, because what he did is he took off Ivan Leguizamon, Hugo Fernandez. He brought on Benedetto. He brought on, I can't remember now, Franco maybe in the midfield. Yeah.
Yes, Alex Franco.
Yeah, he brings on Franco, and that gives them that bit more of control for two reasons. One, because they start winning more duels, so that's obviously helping, but also because of the quality of somebody like Benedetto. And what Benedetto did really well is he started dropping deep, making Pires da Mota kind of have to follow him because the defenders couldn't pick him up. And then Da Mota wasn't doing the job he'd been doing in the first half because he's too focused on Benedetto, and it becomes a very difficult thing. And I mean, there's a lot at the final goal. There's a lot of criticism of Gatito Fernandez, right, from a lot of people because the angle is very tight where Rodney Redes shoots, and you feel it's something you can save with your body or with your legs. But we know what Fernandez likes to do. He always likes to try and get his hands down. He does have very good reflexes generally from shots, but it looks very awkward the way he tries to get his foot down to his ankle instead of just sticking his leg out, and the ball kind of goes between him. But if you look at the build-up of that goal, there's so many mistakes by Cerro because it actually starts with a Cerro throw that Velasquez gives really badly. Instead of giving it to Da Costa's feet, he makes it bounce in front of him. So it's a bit awkward. He has to take a touch. The second touch is very poor. It's like a really soft pass to Da Mota. Da Mota there loses it. And so suddenly they've lost the ball in a silly area by not doing much. And then the quality of Benedetto with the pass. What, by the way, who's the player that Benedetto turns and leaves? It's Diego Leon. So Diego Leon in the Clásicos, for as good a player he is attacking, this is the second time in a Clásico that defensively he's been caught out a little bit. So just a reminder that he's such a good player going forward, but he's still going to have to work a lot defensively. But overall, I thought on the basis of the first half, I thought, wow, Cerro have been the better team. They're a bit unlucky to be at 1-1. But at the end of the game, it did feel the right result that Olimpia came away with the 3 points. And now they're sticking close to Libertad, while Cerro have to do a lot of chasing.
Yeah, about to say, going back to that table, like I mentioned, Libertad are top with 16, Olimpia with 13, Guarani right there with 12, but Cedro all the way with 8, with a lot of teams right there. So you have a big gap as it is. I mean, Fede, are we saying it? Are we going to say the magic words? Are we really going to cut Cedro out of the competition, the title race, or you feel like it's still early for them?
As of right now, I feel them totally out of the race just because of the way they played. The big games they lost against the big teams, but against the contenders, those are the games that come back and hit you around at the end of the tournament. So far, it does not look like a championship run for them. For me, it looks like a one-on-one between Olimpia and Libertad because Olimpia has really catched up to the way that I thought that they can play. They showed that in the Superclásico. They're building something there. They got all their players back, and Libertad has just kept on winning. They keep on figuring out. They're doing a fantastic job, just like they usually do in the Aperturas, really concentrated and trying to win the first tournament so they don't have to do that in the second part of the year. And even though they're losing Ruben Lescano now, that's the official news. They're losing one of their starting players. He's apparently going to the Brazilian league. He's going to play for Fluminense. That's a huge move, actually. Another big sell. This was a player that we thought could end up even in Europe in this transfer window, but he ends up going to Brazil. A big move for him. Hopefully he ends up playing there as much as he needs. He's from the same city where Julio Enciso was. He's actually a very good friends with Julio Enciso. A lot of people said they kind of even look alike the way they played when they were just starting out. So maybe he can pick up his career also. I think there's still a lot to do with him. But going back to the local league, Roberto, as of right now, I see Libertad and Olimpia. They are the only teams that are really playing for a championship. Guarani, I said it the last couple of episodes. If they have a couple of players out, they're gonna have problems. And just the first game late, they didn't have Willy Mendieta. They lost last week, and they haven't had Danny Perez. Also, they lose just a couple of starting players, and they don't have them to replace, and they don't have replacements. So I'm worried about that situation going forward. Hopefully, it is one more team out there that can do something. But as of right now, Ralph, I don't see it. I think it's between Libertad and Olimpia.
Yeah, you're starting to get that feeling. Like you said, Libertad are really in their Apertura mode and just grinding out results. Not even grinding out results, just winning games quite easily, like almost machine-like as they start to build into it. Of course, things might change as international competition comes in, and then you have more games coming out each week. But at the moment, it just looks like Sergio Aquino's like really got his team kind of working, and he's such a well-respected. I mean, this is his first big job as a coach, but he's such a well-respected figure in Libertad, in Paraguayan football, for everything he won as a player and the work he'd been doing with the youth teams. So I think there's a lot of harmony at the moment. Olimpia is similar. You have the same coach now, and he's won a title, so I think people are in there. And with Guarani, it's more they have a very small squad, so can they keep those players together? So it does seem it's more and more looking like Libertad and Olimpia. I wanted to pick up though about Libertad and you mentioning Ruben Lescano. Yeah, he's a player that has got much better as time has gone on. You know, he showed more and more end product. So at first, when he first broke into the team, you could see, okay, he's a very good player. He has a lot of quality, but he wasn't giving much end product. Then now he's been contributing. I think he's got 4 assists already. He's got like 7 goal involvements in 6 games or something. So he has had a great start to the season. He ended the season like that with Libertad. And so that's why he was on the radar of so many big clubs. I read somewhere, and I haven't checked this, but I don't believe it's wrong. Libertad have now made over $40 million in player sales since 2022. I mean, that is huge for the Paraguayan market. At the moment, they have 3 guys in the Premier League, right? Diego Gomez didn't go there directly, but Diego Gomez, Julio Encisa, and Enzo Gonzalez, Ruben Lescano. They had sold Sebastian Ferreira to Houston for about $5 million. I mean, it's incredible what that youth system has been doing. And that's raised the level of Paraguayan football, because for Cerro and for Olimpia to want to compete with Libertad, they've had to raise their games as well. So it's very interesting to see that. And even now they're exporting managers, right? Because this week, Ariel Galeano, who won everything with them in 2024, 2023. Wait, 2024. I'm forgetting my years. He's gone to a club in Poland to LKS. I don't know if I pronounced the L right because it has like a little slash through it in Polish, but he's gone to the 2nd division of Poland. He had been in Greece. The contract got rescinded. I think there were some issues there, so the contract got rescinded by mutual consent. And he's actually received, the reason he's able to coach in Europe is because he has a pro license, a UEFA pro license, but through an agreement between CONMEBOL and UEFA. So he's actually the first Paraguayan coach that managed to do like an equivalency of his CONMEBOL licenses to UEFA, which meant that he's able to coach in Europe. So I mean, Libertad at the moment, there's so many players going everywhere, and maybe the best of the bunch when you're looking at that $40 million they made is probably Diego Gomez right now.
It really is something that I think is really interesting to see what Libertad do, because as much as they've been kind of a team that likes to buy some of the best players from around the world, or at least across the continent, and to perform well, they've also been really well as a selling club, and that's a good thing to see, especially for all the moves that they've done now with this, like you said, the Ruben Lescano move. Going back, I think it is going to be a long way for Cerro to really catch up to them, to Olimpia, to Libertad, and to Guarani. So I think right now, unless there is a sudden drop off from one of those 3 teams, I think Cerro are out of the title race for the moment. So they have to put all their eggs in their basket for the Libertadores or Sudamericana, depending on what happens to them. So that's going to be their main focus for them, as we switch gears now to what's been going on with the Paraguayans abroad, because of course we've seen, obviously, like I mentioned at the top of the show, Gustavo Alfaro, traveling all across Europe, all across England, as we saw him visit some players. And one of the players that he did visit, who actually had a really good performance as his first start, was Diego Gomez. And Diego Gomez got his first start in the game against Bournemouth. They ended up winning 2-1, but he had a really good performance in the first half, really well received. And I think in these last few games, Ralph, I think, I haven't seen anything negative so far. Yes, he's only played 4 or 5 games, and most of them coming off as a sub, but it has been really nice and refreshing to see that the reception, at least from the fans, from people that watch the Premier League, for Brighton fans as a whole, that he's getting all these positive contributions, and that he's, someone that obviously I feel like is getting a lot of praise in England, which, obviously we have so many Paraguayans playing there that at least one of them had to stand out, and it looks like Diego is standing out for the time being.
Yeah, it's been a good start, like you say, substitute appearances. Then he got his first start, and Gustavo Alfaro was there to see it, which I think was great. He's a player a bit like Almiron. If you think about Almiron, he's a player that is hard not to like him from the way he plays, right? Because he's going to give it his all. His body language is always positive. He's very simple person in the way he does things. Even playing, right? He's not extravagant like say for example Julian Ciso, but he's also just so talented and so unique in everything he does. So you're seeing where he can win lots of duels. He makes a lot of tackles, but then he's doing key passes. He's creating chances. He's having shots on goal. So he's like this all-action player. So in any game, Diego Gomez stuff's going to be happening around him, or he's going to become attracted to the ball. So is not a player that you can't have an opinion about because he's not going to disappear. And just because of his athleticism, his work rate, and like I'm saying, like he's quite a simple guy. Does the simple things, but does it really, really well. It makes him hard not to love. So it's been a really good start. I think it was very important that he got a start in the Premier League because that kind of suggests that Hertzler is trusting him where he hadn't trusted in Ciso, I think. He's trusting him and he's built him up slowly. And so this could become the starting spot for him for the rest of the season.
How special, how much motivation can it be for a player like Diego to receive there, and have Gustavo Alfaro, your national team coach, watching your game, having having dinner after the game, spending 2, 3 hours with him. I mean, it must be a special moment for him, right? For the first game that he gets to start also. So it was a special night, I would even say, and you could kind of feel it also. Just you saw how excited he was to be on the pitch. He looked so happy, full of joy, and I think that was the main point for me. Besides everything that he does with the ball, I mean, he was just the same player that I've seen this last couple of years. But just have him free out there, have him just be himself out there in the Premier League, guys. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. You're usually more concentrated. You're usually under pressure. You want to hang on to that spot that you've been giving, especially when the coach, I don't know, the way I've seen it, he hasn't given him full confidence from the get-go. So he kind of went slow with him. I'll give you minutes. You earn your spot. Now he's earned the spot. He was probably the best midfielder in this game. So now I'm hoping that this German coach respects what he's done so far and maintains him in that midfield going forward. I want to see him in the starting job. And obviously I think Diego has just so much ahead of him. If he has a couple of more games like the one that I saw the other day, he's going to catch the big team's attentions because of everything that he's done before coming to this team. I mean, he's played with Messi, he's played with Busquets. He knows what he coming into the European football is going to look like after having practiced with those guys in Miami, Roberto.
Yeah, and I think the good thing that I've seen so far, and Hertel has really given him that kind of praise. You see that in the press conferences or post, calling him a warrior, calling him someone that gives a lot, has a lot of passion for the game. So clearly, those comments are important for a player like him, and of course the motivation. And I was listening to one of his interviews. I think it was yesterday after that game, where he talked about, and he was openly truthful, saying, after the first 10, 15 days, I wasn't up to shape. I wasn't, and I struggled with my fitness, and because he hadn't played in almost 2 months. But also in the game against Bournemouth, that yeah, he had such a good performance, but he was already exhausted. So for something like that, Ralph, to be someone that is self-critical within itself shows that this is someone that could grow into a player that when he is at the level that he needs to be to play in the Premier League week in and week out and play in major games, that he could look back and say like, yeah, even in these games maybe he performed as good as he could, but in reality, maybe he wasn't the best that we got from Diego Gomez. And you had said it so many times on these episodes, like all the challenges that he's gotten through in his life, even at Libertad, for Inter Miami and Paraguay or whatever. He just every challenge that he gets through, he just surpasses it. And now at this one at Brighton, another challenge, and he surpasses it again.
Yeah, that's right. Another challenge, he gets through it, and it's a good point that he won't be fully fit, but he's also not reached his ceiling, I think, right? He's still very young. There's so much more that he's able to bring, and it's almost a scary thought, right? For the rest of the Premier League about what fully fit Diego Gomez, but also maybe with another year or two experience could really do. I mean, he's got, so like I've said before, it's such a unique talent to be able to do so many different things in the same game from the position you're given on and off the ball. And I I don't think he's going to struggle with the way Brighton play because of having played under Tata Martino at Inter Miami, it was very similar. I mean, sometimes they're playing 100 miles an hour, trying to press really high, but then they've got to get back because the other team's set up to counter because you're playing against a team with Messi. And he was always able to do that. And there were times where I watched him at Inter Miami thinking, oh, you're too deep. You're too deep. Like, you don't want to be there trying to defend. You want to be higher up. But he was just able to do it. And so I think the way Brighton play as well is quite similar. So once he's at that 100% fitness, if he's saying he's not 100%, I mean, once he's at 100%, watch out Premier League, right? Because I think he could be a really exciting player.
Fede, are we looking into a situation, or even now? I mean, it's crazy to think that just because of how well Paraguay have done in these qualifiers, and you also have to take in consideration their club form. But is he the best Paraguayan player in the world right now?
I would say so. I think he's shown that ever since that goal against Brazil, I would even say. I think that was his statement right there. I mean, last year, I'm here. This is what I can bring to the team. And this is me right here, picking up in an important game like this. And he showed the world what he's capable of doing. He did it in the MLS. That's why he was named probably one of the best midfielders in the league last season also. And that's why so fast he went to the Premier League. He should have probably stayed a couple more years in the MLS, but no, he's ready for it, and he wants more challenges, and he probably will end up playing in a bigger team if he's able to stay fit, which is something that the other two Libertad players that went to the Premier League haven't done yet. I'll talk about Enzo, that we still want to see in Wolverhampton. Hopefully, we'll see him this season, eventually coming back. I know he's very close to that. And Julio Enciso, who only played one game so far for Ipswich, we thought that his injury was going to be kind of long term. Thankfully, he has not been that way. He's about to come back, so hopefully he does start playing and he doesn't leave that team, and can play as much as he can from here on to the end of the season. But we want to see them, Roberto. We need for these players to start playing a lot more. So just to see what Diego can bring to this team, I think that he's gonna be a star in this team. I have no doubt about it. He's eventually gonna be there with Mitoma, with the best players that this team has had in these last couple of seasons, and he's gonna build relationships. He's gonna turn out to be probably a leader eventually in that locker room. I think he has the character for it.
Rob, what do you think? Diego Gomez, best player in the world from Paraguay right now?
Best Paraguayan, yeah, I think so. I think because of just like I keep saying, that unique quality. He's also is a leader in the team. Remember at the Olympics, I mean, he's been doing it on the big stage against Brazil, against Argentina. There's no one else really who's doing it consistently like Gomez has been doing for the last 18 months, maybe more or less. So yeah, he's definitely, for me, up there. But also remember how young he is, so the ceiling is much higher. That's the exciting thing.
Yeah, he turns 22 in March. It was just crazy to think that, he's done all of this, but he's still very, very young. So we have to wait and see what happens. Big game in the FA Cup, of course. They got Newcastle on the weekend. We'll see if that extends the opportunity for him to qualify. Ramon Sosa as well in that tournament as well. They got a big game in the FA Cup too. So we'll see what he's been doing. And of course, of all the Paraguayans abroad, we saw that even in MLS, the Paraguayans playing there. We started with Almiron and Carlos Coronel and many others who are playing there. We are keeping an eye. Yelpo Flores just played for Cincinnati. So yeah, it's really coming into the right time, especially with all these games happening in a couple of weeks before the big games in the qualifiers. As we close out another great episode of Guarani Vision, for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hanna. Thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.